Hello everybody, welcome to the GSMC Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Samantha Genser. I'm going to be your show host for you today. We have a very exciting show that we're going to be covering. We're going to be covering the rise of women's sports bars, oh my gosh, the WNBA stand-up performances, and a little change in team rankings, Barcelona soccer beating Lyon, and 3 soccer players leaving the Argentina team, recent women's UFC fights, and current standings. And make sure you stay till the end of today's podcast to hear about the CrossFit semifinals in the... Oh, I'm so sorry if you can hear my dog in the background. She's a bit emotional, so I'm sorry if you can hear her. And make sure you stay till the end to hear a recap of the CrossFit semifinals in the Oceania region and the 4 athletes that have qualified to the games. Very, very exciting. Before we begin, I wanted to ask you guys to like and follow the show, and to become a part of our show to tip and donate using the link gsmcpodcast.net. Also, we do get a number of questions and comments that come from viewers during the show, so to ensure that your questions and comments get read on the air and that I see them, use the link gsmcpodcast.net. Let's put your questions and comments at the top of the list so that I see them. Also, it really does help the show. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. Okay, now it is time to start the show. I hope you guys enjoy today's content. So our first segment today is very, very fun. We're going to be talking about the rise in women's sports bars. So as we know, the interest in women's sports has increased tremendously this year, and many sports bars now have the goal of showcasing women's sports on their screens to elevate this interest even more and support these female athletes. Interest in women's sports is at an all-time high, helped by, Caitlin Clark's new beginnings this year when she shattered all-time NCAA scoring records for women and men, and also joined the WNBA. And then the championship game, as we know, between Iowa and South Carolina on April 7th drew 18.9 million viewers on average, and that surpassed the audience for the men's title match for the first time, which is crazy. And really, really good for women's sports. The rise in interest is not just for women's basketball, though, but also for other sports as well. The 2023 Women's World Cup reported record attendance with nearly 2 million fans. A University of Nebraska volleyball game played in a football stadium drew more than 92,000 people last August, a world record for largest attendance at a women's sporting event. Before April of 2022, public spaces to watch televised women's sports across the United States were basically non-existent. However, in Portland, a sports bar fully committed to showing WNBA, NWSL, and WTA games and, much more women's leagues has taken center stage. The bar's name is the Sports Bra. Super clever name. I love that name, and that is why I mispronounced the sports bar and sports bra name in the introduction there. So this sports bar, it serves drinks from women-run breweries and distilleries. It has a kids menu, as well as gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegan options across an extensive pub menu fare, all that. Jenny Nguyen, who is on the right here, founded this bar, and inclusion is her main goal. She has already had a lot of success at the Sports Bra. The Sports Bra is now being used as a national franchise to create more women's sports bars. Under the plan, bars and entrepreneurs elsewhere will be able to apply to use the Sports Bra brand for their franchises. Nguyen is open to working with people who already have a physical space, as well as those who may only have just a business plan. What matters, she said, is that the potential future for partners share the Sports Bra's values. One aspiring partner is Jackie Rowe, who hopes to open a franchise in Cincinnati, where she works as the CEO of a media and marketing agency. During an interview at the Sports Bra, where she happily watched her college women's lacrosse team on one of the TV sets, she said such establishments, quote, celebrate women's sports and the champions and the athletes behind the story. And then in March, a bar of their own, which is the name of the bar, opened in Minneapolis, inspired by Nguyen's success. Owner Jillian Hiscock hoped for years that a space to watch women's sports would open in the Twin Cities. When it didn't, and the games she wanted to watch still weren't shown at most local venues, a call with Nguyen encouraged Hiscock to apply her project management experience to a restaurant-sized, colorful sports bar. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna keep mixing up the two. A colorful sports bar with free parking and 12 TVs showing everything from Minnesota Lynx games to non-Olympic gymnastics. The screens are visible from every seat to be enjoyed by guests drinking pours from women-owned breweries and distilleries also. Hiscock said, "We've gotten used to being okay with women's sports fans being an afterthought, which is no longer okay. People are no longer accepting it. People are no longer okay with having to ask and beg to be recognized. We're doing our best to highlight these women athletes, and so we're creating our own spaces. We're creating places that are the places that we've wanted to exist, that didn't exist without us. It's a long time coming." Hiscock sees these new spaces as part of the longer story of women's sports and athletes striving for recognition, be it, equal pay, prize money, or just airtime in general. The latter is an ongoing challenge for all women's sports bars owners. Jen Barnes, the owner of Seattle Rough and Tumble, said, "You need a master's degree in streaming services to be able to be a women's sports fan. It's really frustrating how difficult we make it for people to watch women's sports, and we've had incredible progress." In February 2023, just months after opening, Rough and Tumble sold out its capacity of 255 during the Women's World Cup. During the NCAA Women's March Madness tournament, there were lines around the block, and then when the Reign made the NWSL playoffs that fall, the pub had to turn away thousands of fans who wanted to come watch the game, which is insane. But Rough and Tumble had a ripple effect on the bars. When people couldn't get into the women's sports bars to watch the Reign, they went to a nearby establishment and filled them up. And all there were well over 40 watch parties at Seattle bars and restaurants to view the NWSL championship. In 12 months, Seattle went from having one or two places that might play a Reign game here or there to selling out watch parties all over the city. So that whole bar did wonders for the city. But going back to the whole subscription and streaming service issues, even with a subscription to nearly every streaming service, bars can't show the variety of women's games that lack commercial licensing, including many that stream exclusively on Peacock or that can be viewed with the WNBA League Pass. Much needed improvements are coming. As of November 2023, the National Women's Soccer League's media rights deal is the biggest broadcast agreement to date for women's sports, via new partnerships with CBS, ESPN, Amazon Prime Video, and Scripps Sports. This year, 118 NWSL games will be broadcast, a major increase from 30 broadcast windows in 2023. But in comparison, MLB season, which overlaps with the women's soccer season, broadcasts 2,430 games. So yeah, there's still a huge gap there, but it's definitely better from 30. Frustration when seeking women's games to screen year-round is a recurring issue at Icarus, Wings and Fangs in Salem, Oregon. Co-owner Kelly Gilliland prioritizes showing women's games, but when she does, folks tucking into crisp gluten-free wings at communal tables may not be so amenable and happy with that. They sometimes request that staff change the carefully curated channel to show men's games, which are likely playing at every other venue in town. And Gilliland said about this, "People just don't realize how unlikely it is to find women's sports playing in a bar. We want to be a space where we are not excluding everybody." She also mentioned that it's a good conversation opener when things like this happen. Meanwhile, in New York, a city that seemingly has everything except a place to watch women's sports, which is so strange to me, Athlea's and Athena Kiki's both plan to open women's sports bars in the near future. Jenny Garcia, who is 37 years old, has been a New York Liberty fan since the team was founded in 1997 and spent most of her 20s looking for bars to watch the games. Often denied her request to change one of the multiple TV streams to a WNBA game, which, as we know, overlaps with the baseball season. She finally found a few spots that were open to it, but they ended up closing during the pandemic. Brianna Stewart, 2023's WNBA MVP and New York Liberty forward, said, "These bars are going to uplift and amplify women and women's sports. When we have more viewers, it gains attention. The excuse of not being able to watch isn't going to be an excuse anymore. There's a lot of momentum to get behind." Also, Jackie Diner is in the process of opening Watch Me, a women's sports bar in Long Beach, California. And she said, Progress takes time, and the time is now. Jenny created the women's sports bar movement. This is just getting started. Everything's aligning. We have superstar athletes and teams. There's a bubble of energy that's been vibrating and just starting to explode. Some other women's sports bars are Parlor Sports in Somerville, Massachusetts, and Whiskey Girl Tavern in Chicago. Both are not technically exclusively dedicated to women's sports, but they very much prioritize them. The emphasis on building community is reflected in women's sports fandom too. Because women's sports are still not as accessible or equitable as they should be, Barnes says that fans are much more likely to show up to support establishments that promote the women's games. She said there's a feeling of ownership and investment on an individual basis that you just don't get from commercialized men's sports. These fans really believe that their participation will make a difference, and so do the bar owners, and I completely believe that too. Every single thing is going to make a difference. It all adds up together, if that makes sense. So we're now going to move on to our next segment where we talk about the WNBA standout performances and updated team rankings, which is very, very juicy gossip there. So, sorry, I was looking at the comments right now. Yes, I agree that Chelsea's women's team killed it this year. Okay, so we are now going to take a short break, and I will be right back, everybody. Okay, so we will see you guys very soon.